even posted a disturbing discovery he made while eating a Subway sandwich on social media on January 9, 2013. Matt Corby, a sandwich fanatic, had placed an order for a supposed 12-inch sub from a Subway in Perth, Australia earlier that day. Matt was famished by the time he reached the restaurant. He has spent the entire day anticipating this moment. He paid for his order, hopped in queue, and ordered his sandwich. Now the only thing left was to eat and enjoy his footlong sub. However, Matt said to himself, "You know what? Let's see if this thing really is a foot long," before taking a bite. So he placed a tape measure over his sandwich. To his surprise and horror, it was merely 11 inches, a far cry from the stated 12-inch 5-foot long. Upset and confused, Matt posted the photo to Subway Australia's Facebook page with the simple message, "Subway, please respond," and the picture received over 100,000 likes in no time. However, Matt didn't get the answer he was hoping for. Upon viewing the post, Subway Australia reacted in the worst manner imaginable, as if they were hoping for criticism. These are their words. With regards to the size of the bread and calling it a foot long, Subway footlong is a registered trademark as a descriptive name for the sub sold in Subway restaurants, not intended to be a measurement of length. This reply has since been deleted. But the harm was already done. Subway made it very clear that it is ridiculous to believe that a footlong should measure 1 foot. You should know it's just a silly name for measurement and branding purposes. I just hope Matt ended up getting the rest of his sandwich. But to be completely honest, this scandal pales in comparison to the other controversies Subway's has faced since 2016. Subway sales have done nothing but decline, resulting in store closings, angry franchisees, and unsatisfied customers. And that's merely the tip of the iceberg. Today we're going to cover the history of Subway, how it developed from an idea to the second largest restaurant chain in the world, and why so many people despise them for so many reasons. I have a question for you. Have you ever heard of Pete's Super Submarines? Although I have not done so myself, I was surprised when I discovered that in 1965, a young businessman by the name of Fred DeLuca opened a sandwich shop with that name. The establishment that would later develop into the Subway franchise that you are familiar with and either love or hate today. Boasting nearly 37,000 locations as of June 2021, Subway is the second largest fast food chain in the world. Subway operates in more than 100 countries globally and has at least 50 stores in each state. And Subway sold sandwiches worth $972 million in just last year. However, Subway has certain obvious problems in spite of their large number of stores and high profitability. It's so bad people go out of their way to make parody videos and analysis videos about why they're going to fail. However, things weren't always this way. Business was booming for Subway when it first opened. It almost sounds wild, but people used to really love Subway. They were once praised by many as the healthy alternative in the world of fast food. The most fascinating truth about Subway, though, has to do with Fred DeLuca, the founder. Fred never wanted to own a sandwich shop, let alone be a businessman. He wanted to be a doctor, not a sandwich artist. However, the issue was that he had no money left over to cover his college expenses. Even so, he wasn't deterred for even a split second. Nuclear physicist Dr. Peter Buck was a friend of the DeLuca family. While not exactly what Fred intended to pursue, he was nonetheless a doctor. So Fred turned to Dr. Peter for guidance on getting a doctorate and how to raise money for college. Since Dr. Peter was fairly well off, Fred was secretly hoping he'd offer to pay for his entire tuition. But Dr. Peter didn't offer to pay for Fred's college. Instead, he offered something completely different. "Fred, I'll give you $1,000 right now, but I don't want you to spend a single cent of that on college," Dr. Peter told him. "We'll create a sandwich business together, and the money you make will go towards funding your education. What do you say?" Dr. Peter's response not only surprised Fred, it shocked him. He almost thought it was a joke. Fred accepted, shaking Dr. Peter's hand even though it wasn't what he was expecting. And they were now officially in business. From there, they got to work building the first ever Subway. During their first few years of business, they went by Pete's Super Submarines before changing it to Pete's Subs, and then Pete's Subway, and finally just Subway by the 1970s. The very first Subway restaurant opened its doors on Bridgeport, Connecticut's Main Street in 1965. Despite its modest size, the first Subway set the standard for all others to follow. However, Fred and Dr. Peter terribly underestimated how difficult owning a sandwich store could be. By the end of their first year of operation, things had gotten so bad that they were on the verge of calling it quits. The two had not turned a profit in their first year together. To make matters worse, they had less than $25 left out of the $1,000 they started with, and business wasn't getting any better. But for some reason, this didn't deter them. Instead of permanently closing their doors, they disregarded logic and launched a second restaurant close by. With this new one, they felt even more confident. They were going to hit it big this time. However, this establishment performed worse than expected in every aspect. They were losing money, losing time, and not helping Fred fund his college tuition. So in a desperate attempt to salvage this situation, they once more defied logic and created a third store, which was a completely ridiculous financial decision. However, this time was different for some reason. Instead of losing money, they made profits of $6,000 in their first full year of running. The funniest part is, once they experienced this success, Fred decided he no longer cared about the medical industry and wanted to pursue a career in the food industry. The following year, in 1966, Fred and Dr. Peter formed a holding company called Doctors Associates Incorporated to oversee the running of their shops. Fred and Dr. Peter targeted having 30 Subway locations operating throughout the state of Connecticut by 1974. But by the time 1974 arrived, Fred and Dr. Peter had just 16 stores in Connecticut, barely half of what they had hoped for. Fred was deeply disappointed by this massive failure and went out to discover why. Why were they lagging so much behind, and why couldn't they open new stores quickly? After looking into it, Fred found a significant problem. It was almost impossible to keep the same quality from store to store, at least per the way they currently ran things. What were other companies doing differently? And that's when he had a revelation that led to the creation of Subway as it exists today. And that is the magic of franchising. A term you've probably heard of before. To be honest, I had no idea what a franchise even meant for the majority of my life. In simplest terms, a franchise or franchising is a method of distributing products or services. Basically, the franchisor, which would in this case be Subway, establishes the brand's trademark and a business system. Then the franchisee is a royalty and usually an initial fee for the right to do business under the franchisor's name and system. So buying a franchise is the ideal option for those who wish to launch a business but don't want to create their own firm from scratch. In 1974, after realizing that franchising was the key to rapid success, Fred persuaded his old friend Brian Dixon to open the first Subway franchise, which he did in Wallingford, Connecticut. Using the franchising business model, Subway was able to open 14 more locations in that same year. By now, Subway had opened 30 locations and had a tested strategy for growing its business fast and effectively. But in order to make their expansion worthwhile, they had to make sure the food quality was the same from restaurant to restaurant. Fred came up with the principles that all Subway restaurants had to abide by. High-quality fresh food and customer satisfaction were the pillars which the franchisees needed to keep up. Additionally, they mandated that all bread used for sandwiches be baked on-site at the store. This helped increase Subway's reputation and demand as the quality of the product increased. In 1978, Subway inaugurated its 100th location. It was at this point they pulled out all the stops and began to focus on worldwide sandwich domination. Bahrain was the site of Subway's first international outlet, which opened its doors in 1984. And Subway opened its 1,000th location by 1987. But this is nothing compared to what was to come. Subway celebrated the launch of their 10,000th location in 1998. They were now unstoppable and could become as big as they wanted. They began to spread to nearly every nation on the planet, including Sweden, Germany, Pakistan, and Hong Kong. In 2000, they kicked off a marketing campaign that would impact the sales of Subway products everywhere in the world. A 22-year-old man called Jared Fogle claimed in this advertisement that he dropped over 240 pounds by eating just Subway sandwiches. This boosted Subway's reputation as the healthy place to get fast food as America was struggling with high obesity levels due to fast food. Subway became the best option for people to choose. In 2002, Subway outperformed McDonald's and became the franchise with the biggest number of restaurants. But as you know, this wouldn't last. Subway ended off the 2000s strong. But once the decade of the 2010s arrived, issues started to arise. It's fair to say the 2010s have not been kind to Subway, or maybe Subway's been unkind to the 2010s. Let's take a look and see what happened. On September 14, 2015, just weeks after celebrating the 50th anniversary of the franchise, Subway founder Fred DeLuca passed away after a long battle with leukemia. This tragedy was the catalyst for Subway's catastrophic decline. And that's not to say they had a perfect history. Before this, there was that whole footlong issue we talked about in the beginning of the video, among other small issues like that, but nothing compared to what would happen after Fred's passing. So why did Subway begin having problems? Everything begins with Suzanne, Fred's sister, following his passing. Greco Suzanne cherished her brother's company. She even worked at Subway for a short time as a teenager, so she stepped in right away, dropping everything to become the new CEO of Subway. Everyone initially appreciated Suzanne's zeal and commitment to the company. However, it soon became apparent that she was underqualified for the position and was actually pretty bad at it. As a result, franchisees started hating her and held her responsible for store closures and the company's lack of profitability. Franchisees expressed dissatisfaction over Greco's failure to provide them with the necessary resources to succeed as a Subway franchisee, and about the lack of any initiatives to foster growth within the company. In total, Susan lasted 3 years, but some say she should have retired long before that. During her time as CEO, Subway experienced record store closures, closing more stores than the previous year every year. In 2016, Subway closed 350-plus stores. In 2017, 800-plus stores, and in 2018, her last year, they closed over 1,000 stores, and with a decline in locations came a decline in revenue. But don't worry, I'm not blaming all of Subway's problems on Suzanne. She is but a little part of the whole picture. Remember how I told you earlier about Jared Fogle, the guy who ate Subway and lost almost 240 pounds? In contrast to his uplifting and motivational persona, something terrible surfaced about Jared Fogle in 2015, the year Susan Greco took over as CEO. Jared Fogle, in real life, had a troubled past. Jared had some dark interests which led him to doing some awful stuff. Stuff so bad that if I mentioned it by name, YouTube probably wouldn't recommend this video to people. But let's just say that they discovered some nasty and horrible stuff on his computer for which he could have been sentenced to up to 50 years in prison. That is if he went to trial, but Fogle didn't want to take his chances, so he took a plea deal. 15 years and 8 months in Jefferson County Federal Prison, and that's where he sits to this day. After all of this was revealed, Subway cut all ties with Fogle, but it did very little to their reputation. Whether they like it or not, Subway's history will always include Jared's story, no matter how hard they try. It's impossible to say just how much the Jared stuff impacted Subway as a brand, but it's safe to say this ushered in a new era for Subway. The post-Jared era marked the start of the end, and was marked by store closures, low revenue, and disinterested customers. Subway's reputation suffered yet another serious blow in 2017. CBC reported that Subway chicken isn't really chicken, or at least only some of it is. According to CBC, Subway's chicken breast is 53.6 chicken DNA, and the chicken strips are barely 42.8% chicken DNA. CBC concluded the majority of the remaining DNA was soy. People were understandably incensed, agitated, and outraged at this. Most people don't like eating fake chicken. Subway, however, was having none of it and sued CBC for $210 million, saying, "We don't know how they produced such unreliable and factually incorrect data. This report is wrong and must be corrected." However, in late 2019, the Ontario Superior Court dismissed the case, deciding that the CBC program qualified as investigative journalism and was shielded by an anti-SLAPP law that permits people to voice their opinions on public issues without worrying about facing legal repercussions for doing so. I'm not sure what to make about Subway chicken after they dropped the lawsuit and claimed the data was inaccurate. How real is it? How fake is it? I don't know. To avoid lawsuits myself, I will just put it that all of this is alleged. One of the worst aspects of why people hate Subway has to do with their slogan, "Eat fresh." Because there's a problem when customers complain about Subway not being fresh enough. But it's another issue entirely when even the employees are raising concerns over freshness and vegetable quality. According to recent interviews, employees state that Subway's Eat Fresh slogan is alarmingly misleading. The lettuce problem is just one of many. It's said to be anywhere from 10 to 15 days old when it gets to Subway. Considering the fact that most franchisees get their permitted supply of vegetables once a week, that lettuce may be up to 22 days old by the time it goes on your sandwich. And that's just one example. According to one employee, all of the fresh products including other vegetables and chicken arrive at restaurants pre-processed with preservatives. I don't think that's most people's idea of fresh. On top of Subway not being fresh, it's also super expensive. It's not exorbitant, but when you compare what you're paying to what you get as a product, the pricing appears insane. The days of $5 footlongs are long gone, unless it's on a Tuesday and you buy a drink. And I get it, times change. Inflation and other economic factors do affect businesses. I'm not complaining, just disappointed. Because when you no longer live up to your slogan or have a competitive price point, what's the point? Why would anyone ever go to Subway when you could go somewhere else for around the same price and a way tastier, fresher experience? Let me tell you about the Subway controversy I found most interesting. So this last controversy happened in 2014, predating all the Suzanne Greco and Jared Fogle stuff, functioning as one of their biggest scandals of 2014. A petition created by blogger activist Vanni Hara, popularly known as Food Babe, urged the chain to remove azide carbonamide, a substance also found in yoga mats, from its bread. After a few days and significant public outcry, Subway agreed to phase out the ingredient, but I think what upset a lot of customers is that they felt like they shouldn't even have to ask Subway to remove ingredients like that. It should just be a part of their Eat Fresh slogan. This controversy is hilarious because it's one of those things you hear online and immediately assume is fake, but then you investigate and find out you might have consumed a few yoga mats yourself. Over the years, when it comes down to it, I don't hate Subway. Unfortunately, it's a lot more complicated than that. Watching Subway in its current depressing form is like to witnessing a friend or relative afflicted with a terrible illness. It seems as though you want to assist them, but are aware that their needs are much greater than your capacity to provide, and it will only be detrimental to both of you to even try. That's how I feel about Subway. I wish they weren't afraid of changing things up, experimenting, getting a little wacky, because the only thing that's really changed since I started going there is the logo. Other than that, a couple one-off menu items that either didn't last or completely bombed. Everything else about the layout is the same. Same recipe, same ingredients. You know the saying, don't fix what's not broke. It may seem to apply here, but the truth is, it's broken and in need of serious repair. If Subway doesn't get the help it needs and fast, Subway won't be around for much longer. I just don't see a place for them in the market unless they make major improvements and change up their advertising. But what do you think? Do you love Subway? Hate Subway? Do you like their chicken? Let me know down in the comments below. If you enjoyed this video, all I ask is that you smash the like button on your way out, subscribe and turn on all notifications so you don't miss a future upload. Thanks again for the support. I'll see you soon.